Hey guys, Solomon from Icodestuff here. Long time no see. I don't think I've uploaded a video for about a year now. I believe it was last Halloween. That's mostly due to me getting a job as a software engineer at the Nerdery in Bloomington, Minnesota. So that's really been taking up a lot of my time, as well as the numerous startups that I've just been working on the side throughout the years. So that hasn't really left much time to upload videos to the Icodestuff channel, as well as update the Instagram page. So I'm really trying to get back in the swing of things and just start uploading videos again. And one thing I'm working on at the moment is updating the Icodestuff website to use Laravel 8 with inertia and Vue and Tailwind CSS. And I saw this as a perfect opportunity to teach or at least showcase creating a CI/CD pipeline in Laravel with GitHub Actions, as this is a very valuable tool to have whenever you start any project, to be honest. And so you might be asking, what is continuous integration and what is continuous deployment? Well, as described by CodeShip, continuous integration is a development practice where developers integrate code into a shared repository frequently. So if you have like a lot of developers who are continuously pushing to, your VCS system, whether it be GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, basically you just want to, ensure that your code is up to standard by running automated tests and automated builds. So this can be very useful in your Laravel applications to ensure breaking changes are kept to a minimum, as any failing build cannot be merged into your target branch. But if your build does pass, it can move on to the next step, which is continuous deployment, which means once your changes have been merged into the target branch, whether it be master, develop, or staging, it is then deployed to that specific environment. So if it's the develop branch, it might deploy to the dev server. If it's the staging branch, it might deploy to the staging environment, as well as master to production, though that's usually less common, as the deployment to production is generally a manual process. But the goal of this video is just basically applying the CI/CD with GitHub Actions to this new Icodestuff Laravel site. As I said, it's very bare bones at the moment. The only thing that I have added was Homestead for like local development, as well as just the inertia and the Tailwind and the Laravel mix. Outside of that, I think I have one page and I have one PHP feature test. I deleted the default Laravel example test, but yeah, let's hop right into the code and show you what I'm looking at. All right. So as I said, this is a pretty bare bones application. Here, the screen might be a bit small, so let me make the font a bit bigger. Appearance, font size, let's say 17, apply that. As well as, let's update the editor as well. Go to the editor, font, current font, make that 17 as well, and we should be set. So let's clear our terminal. The terminal might be small. I haven't figured out a way to zoom that. But basically, the first thing that we're going to want to do, here, let me pull this up. Sorry about that pause. There might be a break in the video. But yeah, so the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to set up our PHPUnit testing suite. As I mentioned earlier, we do have some defaults with Laravel. It does give you a PHPUnit XML file, and it does give you 2 example tests. As I said, though, I did delete that. But the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to set up our testing environment. And the way that we do this, you can directly edit the values in your PHPUnit XML file. But instead, I'm just going to create a new file called .env.testing, which will basically mirror our regular .env file with just a few updated things. So let's add that. So let's copy the name or the first few env values into the testing file. All right. so that should be good. Let's copy the log channel as well. Make sure that's just stack. Next, we will want to add our DB values. I haven't changed my database values, I guess, but we can do that here. So our database is going to be Icodestuff underscore testing, and the way that we know that is by going to our homestead YAML file. We can see some of the databases that we do have. So we have Icodestuff, which is just a regular dev database, and then we have the Icodestuff underscore testing database, which is solely for testing. So yeah, so let's change those values. The default username and password for when you're using homestead is just homestead as the username, and password is just going to be secret. Next up, we're going to want to, I believe, grab our mailer, and we don't want to send any actual mail in our test, so we're going to change this to an array, set that equal to array, and then let's copy our broadcast as well as a few of these right here, queue connection, session driver, etc. So we have log for our broadcast driver. Let's change this cache driver to an array, make our queue connection sync, and we'll change this to an array. And then lastly, I think we are using a Redis queue, but since we're using I think the sync queue connection, it might not be a big deal, but I'm just going to copy the Redis value and paste it in anyways. It won't hurt to do so. Alright, so the next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to check out our PHPUnit file, and we're going to want to remove all of these defaults and just leave the app env prop or value. And then the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to add collision, Laravel collision, which basically makes your PHPUnit responses look pretty in the terminal. Let me copy that over from my other code base. So basically, we're just going to change the printer class value to be to link to the printer class of the collision package. And I believe we should be set there. And so the next thing we're going to want to do is create a database setup trait. I got this from Adam Wathan on a gist, I believe, or I think it was one of his courses or videos. But basically, I found this very useful in all of my Laravel projects, and so I always include this database setup trait. And so let's create database setup, and let's change this from a class to a trait. We'll say OK. This is just going to be a copy and paste from a different code base, but I'm going to link the gist in the description so that you guys can see what's going on. There's not too many comments, but I can walk through what's going on in the file. So if we look at the top of the file, we have this setup database command or function. And so the way it works is it checks if you're running your test in memory using SQLite. And if you're not, it will just set up the regular test database. And if we look at that function, it's just running PHP Artisan migrate fresh seed if your migrations are out of sync. So if so basically the way it works is it checks if the test database is in sync with the dev database or the main database that we have. And so if we recently ran any migrations on the regular database, the testing database will also run that the new PHP Artisan migrate fresh -c. But if it didn't change, it'll leave it be so that we don't have to run PHP Artisan migrate fresh every single time we run a test. And so the way it checks is if we click this when migrations change, we can see that we're creating a text file in the storage path or the storage directory. And the way it's checking is it's just basically checking if the contents of the two files are different. If they are different, then we need to run the migration again. If it's not, then we just leave it be. So that's the database setup command, and we don't want to forget adding it to the test case. So let's use database setup. And so this will always run anytime we run PHP artisan test, or I think /vendor bin PHPUnit is also the same exact command. So that looks like we're set there. Let's check out what's next. All right, so the next up we want to add some static analysis. I always add static analysis in my Laravel projects. So basically static analysis is just a tool to, it runs your code without actually running it, so it can catch any bugs. And so the tool that we're going to be using is PHPStan. So let me pull that up. PHPStan. So PHPStan, as it's described on the repo, is a tool that focuses on finding errors in your code without actually running it. It catches a whole class of bugs even before you write tests for the code. So it's really close to compiled languages like Java or .NET or whatever it may be. And so this is very helpful to catch bugs before actually pushing your code. So of course this is a pretty critical piece in your CI process. But we're going to be using Larastan, which is just an abstraction over PHPStan. And so that's also written by the guy who created the collision package. And so the first thing we're going to want to do is we're just going to want to copy this composer require command. We're using Composer 2 in Homestead right now, so it should actually be much quicker. Normally, whenever I run a composer require command, it would take about like 2 minutes at least, and more often than not, it would run into an issue with memory. But with Composer 2, it's much faster, and yeah, salute to the guys at Composer for making it a much better experience to work with. But continuing on, the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create the actual PHPStan config file. So if we look at the repo, it says we can create a phpstan.neon or phpstan.neon.dist file. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to create a phpstan.neon file, phpstan.neon. And sorry if you guys hear a background noise. I think my MacBook fan is going. I don't know why. I have like 48 gigs of RAM and an i9 processor, so the fan shouldn't be blowing like this. But yeah, sorry about any background noise that might be occurring. All right, so we added the phpstan neon file. Let's copy what we have here from the repo. The only thing we're going to want to change is we don't want to be at a level 5 because that's pretty strict. We're just going to go to a level 1 and work our way up. Cool. And we should be ready to go to actually test this out if we want to. So let's run this PHPStan analyze. For example, let's change this to an 8 to be the highest level, and we'll see that we're going to get a few errors. I believe so. Yeah. And this is just by default. And so, we don't need this. Let's remove this for right now. But if we change this to a level 1, this will just catch the bare minimum bugs, the real serious things. And we get an OK green. That might be a little hard to see. It just says OK, no errors. And so, yeah, it looks like we have PHPStan set up, the actual static analysis piece. So now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create our Github Actions file. Man, this fan is really blowing. This is terrible. Sorry if you guys hear that background noise. It's, I don't know. Apple, you got to step your game up. But what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create a .github directory, and then we want to create a workflows directory, and we're going to want to create a YAML file. We're just going to call it build.yaml. There's a lot of examples of using a few GitHub Actions like config files. I think there's like one specifically for Laravel, but it's missing a few pieces. But we're just going to copy all of what I have over here and paste it in, and we're just going to walk through what's going on. Copy, paste that in. Hopefully it formats correctly. Thank you. Cool. So the first thing we're going to want to change here is we're going to change this to Icodestuff _testing. If I can spell, let me just copy paste this. But this needs to be in sync with your env.testing file, so make sure that's correct. Next up, we can see that we're installing Redis in this build. We're using PHP 7.4, and we're using the setup PHP. I think Git action. So the first thing that we're doing, like running wise, is we're starting our MySQL service, getting our composer cache. All of this is not too significant. This is just some default behavior. But as you can see, you might be more familiar with this, but we're installing our composer dependencies. We're then copying our env.testing file to our .env, and then we're running this PHP artisan migrate env is equal to testing, as well as seeding the database and just forcing it so that it automatically migrates. Next up, we're just changing the directory permissions on the Bootstrap cache file or Bootstrap cache directory. As some of you may know, when working with Laravel applications, that you might run into an issue with permissions here and there. So that just mitigates that. Next up, we're actually running our PHPStan, our static analysis tool that we just ran in our console. And then lastly, or not lastly, but we're running our vendor bin PHPUnit. So this is actually executing our test. I don't think I've showcased running tests yet, so let me do PHP artisan test, and we should get a green. Yep, we only have one test, and if we look at the test content, just pages, home, I can see Icodestuff on the main site. I don't think I showed you the page, so let me show you what that looks like. It's very basic. Just says welcome to Icodestuff. This is the only page that we have so far, but it's sufficient enough for this tutorial. Cool. So I think we should be set to go from here, and we should be able to push what we have. We get the greens from both tests, so let's prepare this to push. So we can have git status, do git add all, git commit. I'm using git commit as in, so it formats my commit messages a bit better. We'll say test demo CI CD for Icodestuff tutorial. Cool. Colon right WQ, and let's push that up. All right. So if we head over to GitHub and we go to the Icodestuff repo, Icodestuff. Oh, let's go to the website. It should be running our Git action, and it looks like we're not doing that quite yet. So let me pause this video, and I will get back to you as soon as I figure that out. Okay, sorry about that. I think I found the culprit of why our Git workflow wasn't running. This is because instead of workflow, this is supposed to be called workflows. Silly mistake on me. And I also forgot to go over one other piece of the file. And this is the actual CD part of it. This is the continuous deployment part. As I labeled, this is optional at the moment. But basically, after running, or after it's merged into whatever target branch that you have, if you're using master, you're using develop, feature branch, whatever it may be, then it will send to Ploy. I use Ploy for my tool for setting up and provisioning servers. But if you're familiar with Laravel, you might be using Forge, Vapor, Vercel, or even just regular plain old AWS. And so by running this command, it's just deploying to Ploy. I have the secrets in my repository. I haven't added it quite yet, but that's all that represents. If you're using AWS, it might be a totally different command. If it's Forge, it might be completely different. But basically, this is where you want to deploy this part of the code. And it'll only run if it passes this Laravel build. So if we scroll up, this whole thing up here is called Laravel. And so if this doesn't pass, then the continuous deployment piece isn't ran. It's not deployed. And so that's that's how, those two are binded together. You run the CI process first, which represents the Laravel build, which runs our tests and ensures that everything's working properly. And if it doesn't pass, then it doesn't go to the next step and actually deploy it. And so, yeah. However, we should be ready to push what we have. So git status, git push. Git add, git commit, fix, rename directory to workflows, :wq, and now we can push. So if we head over back to GitHub, we might have an action already running. Yeah, it looks like we're already running this action, but we can wait. And so I'll just pause the video until the next action is starting to run. We're back. So it's looking like we're running our action. It's just initializing some of the containers. This might be a bit of a process. I think it takes on average like 4 to 5 minutes. So we're not going to go through this whole thing, but I will show you the summary if everything passes, or if there's an error, I will be sure to point that out and let you guys know. But in the meantime, we're just going to wait and see what happens. So we're back, and it looks like one of our two processes has succeeded. The most important part was this actual CI process. Everything looked like it went through. So if we look at some of the tests, we got our one test passing. Check out PHPStan. We get the OK. Everything looks good there. But our deploy failed, and that was expected because we don't have our secret ready, or we don't have the actual value for the secrets.ploy _dev _URI added to the repo. And I haven't added it yet. It's just not ready to go. But typically that's how that would work if you were to add it to your own repo. But yeah, so it's been about 22 minutes. Didn't mean to make it this long of a video. But yeah, this is really how you set up CI/CD into your Laravel applications using GitHub Actions. I'm going to post this as an article on the Icodestuff website when it's ready. And yeah, I'm glad to be back. I'm hoping to start posting more often. So yeah, see you guys in the next video.